Hey guys, Ben Paynes here, and today we are back once again for another Monday night social. However, this one is at Teamsport Cardiff rather than Bristol. And before the race gets underway here, I would just like to say, if you are new here, could you please hit the subscribe button, as I really do appreciate it. And if you do enjoy the video, could you also hit the like button as well, as it really does help me out and it motivates me to complete even more videos at a high rate, just like I am at the moment. Also, as always, my Instagram is linked in the description below if you do want to contact me on a more personal level. However, the layout for this evening, there were only 2 sessions rather than 3 like we're used to at Bristol. There was a 30-minute practice session, which actually turned out to be qualifying for the race session that you're watching now, which was 15 minutes. So we did actually start in 3rd position by 11 thousandths of a second to the person in 2nd place, and then we were dropped by about half a second by fellow YouTuber Matthew Odie, who was out in front. I will link his YouTube channel down below, as he is a very quick driver and a good friend of mine. But here I was really trying to get into the groove of the track, as obviously I'm not used to it, and these are the new karts that I was trying out. And the reason I came over was to try out these new biz karts that they brought in to the track, and I really was used to them being at Bristol, and therefore when I came over last time they used the Sodi karts, so it was a completely different style that I had to use in order to just get around the track in a quick way. Whereas here I was used to biz karts and I use them quite a lot at Bristol, and therefore I think that helped me to really conform to the track and warm up compared to some of the other drivers that were used to coming to Cardiff a lot more. You can see here trying to get as tight as I can to the top 2 hairpins here, hitting the wall a little bit there by going a bit too wide and really maximising my exit coming out of the bottom hairpin, which is a very enjoyable corner. And then this one too also is very fun to go around at full speed and only lifting off a little bit. But we come across the line now with 35.138, so you can see that the lap times are coming down more and more. My goal for this session in terms of time was to get around a mid 34 second lap, as I did get a mid 33 last time I was here, and I heard there was about a second a lap difference between the old karts and these ones as they are warming up and wearing in. And I also wanted to try and come in the top 2 positions, as I knew Matt was out in front and I know he comes to Cardiff quite a bit, and I wanted to try and stay behind him and give him a little bit of a battle. But you can see here the driver in 2nd place, I was behind him and struggling to actually keep up with him, as I thought he was going to drive off at the beginning. But we have managed to close the gap and we are still in 3rd place. The last lap there was 35 dead, so the lap times are coming down each lap that we go round, and I was learning to really grip into the track a lot more, and I was able to get better exits compared to the driver ahead. You can see me turning in and not sliding out as much as I found in these karts, going around the hairpins in particular, which I'll show you for an example on the bottom hairpin here as we go up the ramp. But we do come across the line here with 35.1. You can see I was actually turning in to the bottom hairpin and then hitting the brakes, rather than hitting the brakes and then turning in. So I was having a half slide before I hit the brakes, and as I hit the brakes this did actually allow me to sort of straighten the car out, and then I was able to get on the accelerator. Here's another example. Again, you can see how little my feet are actually hitting the different pedals. I barely touched the brake, and that was allowing me to get a good turn in on the car, and I was able to use the slip angle then with the accelerator to just power out of the corner. We come across the line now once again with 35.088, so we are staying quite consistent in the low 35 second mark. We haven't quite managed to get down to 34, but we have managed to close up to the driver in 2nd place. We are almost in a touching distance of an overtake, but as we look forward you can see Matt in 1st is sort of driving away. So at this point I did think to myself that 1st place was off the cards a little bit, as I don't think I would have been able to catch up with him even if this driver wasn't in front of me. As you can see, he is driving away, and the bottom section here was one that I was really struggling with for the whole evening, as I kept planting my foot into the throttle a little bit too much, and this led to the rear tyres spinning up, and I wasn't able to gain as much traction out of the bottom 2 corners that I'd like to, compared to other drivers that are a bit more used to driving at this track, whereas at Bristol you can be a little bit more forgiven by having a heavy foot, as the tyres do seem to grip in at the back, and this means that you're able to have a lot more traction. On this section in particular is the bit I was on about. You can see there it is quite difficult unless you get a nice tidy line to actually get a good run out of there and then into the bottom hairpin. At this point in the race you can see that I'm still stuck behind the person in second place, and the gap that's been built by them isn't too far, and at this point I really wanted to just stick behind them. You can see, as I've mentioned before, Matt has raced away in first place, so we can't even see him. He's not even a part of what I'm thinking about catching up to anymore, and we are about the third of the way through the race, and I wanted to try and stick behind the person in the cart ahead, and this then led to me getting into the zone a bit. You can see by the top left that my fastest lap has come down to a 34.799, which I was extremely happy with, and I was able to keep improving on this throughout the session, as in the session before I was probably about half a second slower than this. So with time and practice I really could tell that I was getting into the groove and I was getting better as the session went on. And this corner was also extremely difficult for me, as it was actually the one part of the track where you really had to step on the brakes quite a lot in order to get the rotation through. And then obviously, as I mentioned, with the acceleration being difficult to master on that bit too, this resulted in me losing quite a bit of time through the bottom section to the driver ahead on copious different laps, and I was able to make all this time up again. However, on the bottom hairpins, as you can see, really closing up to the driver ahead, as they are a little bit lighter, you can see they are getting a bit better top speed. My favourite excuse being my weight. Once again, I'm bringing it over to Cardiff as well as sticking it out in Bristol, but you can see again we're down to a 34.873. again, an excellent run out of the bottom hairpin. Coming up the ramp, we're really behind the driver ahead now, and here I looked to the right and it sort of made the driver tuck in a little bit, and this compromised their run, and I think this was a really good move by myself, as it meant that he was then able to go a little bit wide coming down the ramp, and I smelt the gap and I took it, which is something that I really have been struggling, but I have also been improving on this recently by getting a little bit more aggressive and going for overtakes when they arise, rather than just sitting behind drivers and sort of wasting my time by being stuck behind a driver that is a little bit slower than me. Here I was checking back, he was hot on my heels. I hadn't actually given him a big gap, so at this point I was a little bit nervous in case the driver did decide to make a massive lunge back past me. You can see there hitting both of the apexes there with the back of the Karts, again a little bit too close, a little bit offline, and unfortunately in this video the camera was a little bit lower down than it usually is, and I don't know why this is. Maybe it was from me shaking my helmet in the previous session back at Bristol on the Thursday, but I will make sure that that is fixed for the next session, don't you worry. However, as I mentioned, I was trying to be as tidy as possible and try and create a bit of a gap. You can see up ahead there were a number of back markers, and as we know on the channel, back markers are my best friend at the moment. So this was coming hot off 4 days from my previous incident with the back marker in the GP1 Elite event, and therefore I didn't want to find myself held up or in an accident with the back markers at this track. Instead, I thought in my head that I could try and use the back markers to hold up the person behind me that was hot on my tail. You can see the person ahead of me sliding around all over the place here, just really ripping the wheel and getting the back end sliding out, and it meant that I was able to really close up. So I was checking behind there to see if the driver behind me was following, and I really didn't want to get held up a bit too much. Went for a little look down the inside, but got a bit stuck. Then I got pushed a little bit, and that meant that I pushed into the person ahead of me. I tried to stay side by side with the driver through this corner. I do get bumped through, and this meant I was able to get a nice run up the ramp away from the person behind me. However, they were still following me past that driver, as I didn't exactly get past the back marker as swiftly as possible. I was moving on to the next one here. You can see another back marker that I'm coming up to, and I really wanted to try and get past and dispatch them as quickly as possible and try and move on and move away from the person that was putting pressure on me, as I really wanted to solidify the second place finish as I really did feel that this was a good result, especially as I've only been to Cardiff a total of 3 times, and there once again really going for a big lunge down the inside on the hairpin. I checked back, and here I almost got squeezed out, but I managed to keep the front of the kart just poked in enough where I was able to make the overtake stick, and got a little bit rammed by the back marker there, but I shook it off and carried on. I didn't want to get too bogged down by that incident, and really taking a nice line through the bottom hairpin and able to get some good traction out of it. And as I look back there, you did notice that the driver who was behind me in second was actually coming down the ramp, so by using the back markers and getting past them as quickly as possible, I have actually managed to make a large gap between myself and the person in second. So as I came up the ramp, you could see me multiple times. You could see him just disappearing there on the right hand side. I was trying to make inroads to try and catch up to Matt in first place, but at this point I knew I was about 2/3 or so through the session, and there wasn't really a lot of chance of me making up all that time that he'd created. He was out in front on his own and enjoying himself by putting in some pretty quick lap times. I think his fastest lap time of the session was in fact a 34.5 second lap in this race, so the fact I got a 34.749 and he is a lot lighter than me made me quite happy. There is some more fast lap times to come though before the end of the session, don't you worry. So here we come down the ramp, dabbing on the brakes as I mentioned, and using the slip angle to really get the kart turned in through there, trying to keep that bit down the straight as possible rather than curving with the bends in the road, hitting the brakes a little bit harder on the bottom corner just to get the rotation in the car, and coming across the line with a 34.812, which I was very happy with. I felt that I was in a very steady state at this point, and I was looking to the left and seeing a lot of back markers and Matt sort of in amongst them, and therefore I didn't want to say never, so I was trying to push as much as I could just in case one of the back markers held him up or took him out and I could swoop in and take that first place. But we move on through once again, going a little bit wide there, almost clipping the wall, hitting the brakes once again, trying to go on that bottom corner there, trying to move to the right a little bit to try and get a straighter exit to the left and then across the line. As I found in the first session I was following the curve of the track, and this led to me sort of going a little bit wider and then having to follow the outer barrier on the right hand side, which meant that I wasn't taking a straight line across the start finish straight. So once again a nice turn in on the bottom hairpin, getting a good exit, and we began to come up behind some more back markers at this point in the race. And once again I didn't really want to get held up behind them. I had given myself a gap to the person behind me, as you can see there, still putting in some ridiculously fast lap times with a 34.740, which I was extremely happy with. And actually, in matter of fact, I didn't realise until I got home, but my fastest lap of the session was in fact fast enough to put me in 4th overall in terms of raw pace, and I'm very happy with this, especially as I've mentioned before, this is only my 3rd time at the track in comparison to Bristol, where I've been about 30 to 40 times, and this really does make me quite happy that I did have the ability to actually push on and put in some really fast lap times that were very competitive to some of the other drivers around me. And I also wanted to say a big thank you to the guys at the Cardiff track, as they're always really incredible and really polite. The staff are amazing, and the new karts that they have brought in are just a joy to drive. It really did make it a very pleasurable and enjoyable evening in general. We had Chris Ball down here, and I know all of you know who he is. He was down there helping out, and here, as I do mention helping out, this in fact was the last lap of the session, and in fact my fastest lap of this session, so I hope that you enjoy it as I continue to just ramble on. However, if you do live close to Bristol or Cardiff or anywhere in the UK, I definitely would recommend giving the Cardiff track a try, as it really is a fun one. It's quite short, it's quite snappy, and as I mentioned, the new karts really are fun to get on with. You can see here, coming round the final corner here in the race, and we come across the line with a 34.646 second lap, which, as I mentioned, was only about 3 or 4 tenths off the fastest person in the session. On that note, this is the end of the video, so I hope you have enjoyed. If you have, could you please hit the like button and subscribe for more in the future. Drop a comment down below. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.